Melissa, welcome to Portugal. It is a pleasure having you here. Just 2 years ago, you were...
First of all, can I just say something?
Yes, sure.
I just want to say thank you for welcoming me to Portugal, and bom dia and obrigado, and that's all I speak in Portuguese. So I wanted to apologize for my English, and I also want to say I'm amazed, despite the fact that I don't speak Portuguese. I understood a fair amount of what was said for the last hour and a half. And just from the emotion, from the expression, from the body language. So inclusion, I think that really is, we don't need language. We get along all the time. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. 2 years ago, you were asked to move to your current role as vice-president for inclusion and diversity. And I know that, like a lot of women here in this room, you were caught by the imposter syndrome. I mean, how did you deal with it, and how did you overcome this self-sabotage?
So imposter syndrome, I think it came up from me early in my career, when I actually turned down the first management job I was offered. And I think the reason was that I didn't think I'd be good at it. So I'll tell you the story. It's a while ago. I grew up in Australia. I heard some talking about Australia before. I'm the oldest of 4 sisters. We're 4 girls in 4 years, so my mum is amazing and exhausted. Right? But being the oldest child, and some of you will be familiar when you're the oldest child and your parents are busy with younger siblings, I sought out getting attention by trying to be perfect. Right? And I was the kind of girl who was devastated if I lost a single mark on a test. It was the end of the world. And I sort of pushed myself to work harder, and that became a negative cycle. I think of perfectionism and control freakness and avoidance, because I really valued my self-worth based on good marks and being good at stuff. I would avoid things that I was not sure I'd be good at. Mm-hmm. So this striving continued into my professional life. I joined Philip Morris as a lawyer in Australia. Then I moved to Hong Kong and Switzerland, always as a lawyer. And when I was offered my first management role, and on a leadership team, I had no management experience. I didn't think I would be a leader. Leaders, in my mind, were extroverted and good presenters. I'm introverted. So I turned it down. Now, how I came over it, my boss, to-be, refused to take no for an answer.
So it's good to have a boss.
It's good to have a boss. And he basically
women.
said, rather than focusing on what you don't know, focus on what you do know, ask for the support you need. And really critically, he told me, I don't expect you to be good at this from the beginning. I expect you to learn. And this was 15 years ago, and I think I carry it with me still with new opportunities. I expect myself to learn.
This progression that you made was a huge message for the company. What was the effect by the creation of this function in PMI International?
It's huge. So diversity and inclusion and diversity, the function itself was created by my predecessor, who has a sales and strategy background, and I think she did the hard entrepreneurial work to set up the dedicated business function about 10 years ago. Obviously, as a multinational, we always had equal opportunity across the whole company, but she, with the CEO, set up a dedicated function, as we just heard from Microsoft and other companies, making the business case why increasing the representation of women in leadership was critical for competitive success, as well as being the right thing to do. And I think that was a huge, powerful message to women and to men across the company. I think my transition into this role 3 years ago when I took it over, so I moved from being a lawyer for 16 years to moving in diversity and inclusion completely out of the blue in some ways. I had no prior experience. But thinking about it, it really made sense, because I've been passionate about and caring greatly about equality for a long time. And more particularly connecting with people, men and women, particularly women, but men and women, and understanding their hopes, their dreams, their challenges, sometimes internal challenges like self-doubt, and also external challenges, and helping them overcome it. So I would say the message from my career progression, as opposed to the inclusion and diversity function, which is a powerful message, what I see is don't focus so much on your job, but on your skills, because skills can transfer across many jobs. And also, I think, find the time to do things you care about. So in 16 years as a lawyer, I was always volunteering in the equality space. I built women's networks in every affiliate I worked at. I didn't have a career plan for it, but I do think sometimes the universe is kind of conspiring for you. So find the time to do the things that you love.
Mm-hmm. Of course, your purpose is to create a more inclusive, gender-balanced workplace at the PMI, in particular to help to remove the barriers that women progressing to leadership roles. And I would like you to share with us, in general, what are the main obstacles to the career progression of women?
The main obstacles to the career progression of women. Well, gender balance is my passion, that's absolutely true. I think my purpose is more than that. I think my purpose is to make the workplace more human, right? And reflecting the diversity of humanity as it really is, and of course, humanity is gender balanced, right? So the lack of women in leadership roles is a talent gap. The main obstacles, I don't think there's one. If there was one, it would be easy to solve. I actually think there's a combination, and it was mentioned before, of interrelated factors, psychological, societal, structural, like a preference for male archetypes of leadership style, command and control, like deep-seated cultural norms about what women do and what men do, like the unavailability of affordable childcare and parental leave for fathers as well as mothers. Mm-hmm. The one that I find incredible, I don't know who decided it, the fact that the traditional career path that goes up, clashes with women's biological clocks. I mean, who decided you had to make your career in your mid-30s when we live till we're 80? All of these factors interrelate. The lack of visible role models, someone said, because you believe you can be what you can see. So I think it is complex. But I think the individual actions you can take to address those factors are not difficult.
And how is PMI addressing these issues?
I think
what are the good practices that you are establishing?
I think it starts, again, and I'm repeating what was said, I'm kind of excited that everyone's aligned. I just want to see action. It starts with commitment from the top, right? It makes make it a business priority with the CEO commitment. And then if it's a business priority, treat it like one, which means having targets, investing money, investing time, measuring progress, holding leaders accountable. So like many companies, we have a target at Philip Morris to increase the representation of women in management to at least 40% by 2022. Mm-hmm. Leaders are accountable for meeting that target or explaining why not, because it's a merit-based target, not a mandated quota. You always need the flexibility to make individual talent decisions based on ability. But the conversations I had with the CEO was, we're a KPI-based company, we have to have targets. And now women are 36% of management roles across the company, across the world, up 6 percentage points in the last 5 years, so we're making progress. The challenge is at the top. And then the initiatives are many, but they're really focused on recruitment, right? Making sure we're recruiting 50-50 male-female into the company. Development from within, talented women from within, making sure they have development plans. Our high potential and senior leaders have executive coaches. I do a lot of coaching myself, and I love that coaching was mentioned about finding values. Opportunities to build networks, to build mentoring relationships, and then preventing attrition as much as possible by providing flexible work practices. So it's not rocket science. They're the buckets and the initiatives in each of them.
And you will get to the results. Today, Philip Morris, the Portuguese company Tabaqueira, is in the news because of the equal salary certification. Please share with us why did you took this step and which results are being obtained.
So this is one I am proud of. This is the equal salary certification. So equal pay for equal work is kind of a no-brainer, I think. It's a foundational measure of equality, and I think a first step in recognising women's broader role in society and contributions to society. And it's incredible to me that in 2019 you can't take it for granted that women are paid the same as men for the same work, usually because of bias in the systems. So at Philip Morris, we wanted to confirm, and at Tabaqueira as well, confirm that we paid men and women equally for equal work by going through a rigorous external pay certification process. And it was designed by the Equal Salary Foundation, which is a not-for-profit. And the certification verifies we pay men and women equally for equal work everywhere we operate all over the world. So from Tabaqueira here in Portugal to Argentina to Russia to Egypt to Indonesia, more than 90 countries. And I think there are two parts to the certification. One is the equal pay for equal work statistical analysis. So the auditors look at all of our salary data all over the world to make sure there are no inexplicable gaps between the salaries of men and women. And then the second part, which is as important, if not more, is a qualitative audit conducted by PwC. They're the auditors appointed by the foundation to confirm their methodology. And that involves them going in to countries and talking to management teams, managing directors, general managers, usually Mr., sometimes Ms., and asking them, what is your commitment to gender equality? Then they interview women, more than 1,000 women in the organisations in Egypt, in Jordan. What's your perception of that commitment to equality? Because perception is important. And then reviewing HR policies and processes to see how rigorous they really are and how objective they are. Because it's an equal pay certification, but it's setting the foundations for equal opportunity, which is how you actually close the pay gap. Because the pay gap is the underrepresentation of women in management roles. So I'm very proud the company's done it, invested quite a lot of time and money to achieve it as a first step to closing the gender gap.
Very well. How do you link diversity and sustainability to the transformation that PMI International is undertaking?
Okay, so Philip Morris International, you will know as one of the world's leading tobacco companies. I don't know if the audience knows, we are going through a transformation like every other company on the planet, but the transformation at Philip Morris is about a vision of a smoke-free future, which in plain language means a future in which Philip Morris stops making cigarettes. So you can imagine that, one of the world's leading tobacco companies not going to make cigarettes anymore. So I think we have a role to play in reducing the harm caused by smoking, alongside governments and public health communities discouraging people from smoking. There's a role in providing men and women who would not stop smoking with alternative products. And that's what Philip Morris's transformation is about, going from being a manufacturer of cigarettes to a science and technology company making products that are scientifically substantiated, and we have a whole R&D faculty staffed mostly by pharmaceutical people to develop these products. Now, of course, this is a massive transformation of a company, from a very traditional business to a science and technology business with the ambition of morphing your entire product. So diversity is incredibly important, obviously. Recruiting talented men and women from all over the world, unleashing the innovation, creativity, disruption that the diversity brings. And I think more holistically on sustainability, and we also heard at sustainability multinational companies with a huge footprint, 77,000 employees around the world, have a role to play in addressing the sustainability challenges of the world, environment, equality, and we see a role to play in that.
In this conference, you talk a lot about women, but I would like to ask you, what about men? Shouldn't they be included in this equation, in this, how we address this problem? I mean, they also want greater flexibility. They want to have a life also. They want to care about their children. How does your company address men?
Men is a great topic. I also want to have a young man working for me. I understood.
Oh, you understood.
Some things I did. Look, men are obviously very, very important, and kudos to the brave men who are here. I love seeing men at these events. One of the problems with gender equality is it still gets boxed as a women's issue, and we talk about inclusion and diversity, and ironically, the initiatives are exclusionary rather than inclusionary. Men are important, I think, and as you said, I think men, particularly millennials and young men, want the same things that women want, right? They're crying out for more flexible working to balance professional, personal, family life. They want to work more collaboratively. They value emotional intelligence. They value empathy. And so really, equality for women means working on equality for men, and in particular destigmatising, I think, men's roles as carers in society. Having said that, it's not easy. So at Philip Morris, I think we started by really emphasising flexible work. is gender neutral. Flexible work is for everyone,
Of course.
right? And really promoting that. For International Men's Day last year, we ran a campaign across the company profiling men who were using flexible work to better balance their family and their home lives. And one of our senior leaders told the story of how when his twin sons were born, he worked 60% for a year. So we're making progress. I would say it's difficult. And one of the reasons it's difficult is because I think gender norms and cultural expectations of men's roles in society are even more deeply entrenched than women's. For women's, we started to shake it up a bit, and we started to broaden. But shaking up men's roles, and depending on the country, many of you are working for multinationals, the attitudes in society from Denmark to Germany to Portugal to Korea are all very different. So you do run into societal expectations. But again, multinationals have a role to play in meeting the needs of young men in particular, but also older generations who want a broader life.
The more difficult thing to change is the mentality, the culture. How do you address these issues, especially the unconscious bias that always come out when we talk about these matters?
So unconscious bias is definitely a challenge, if it's unconscious, and sometimes it's not, okay, but leaving that aside, unconscious bias is definitely a challenge, and we have done trainings all across the world. Many of you will be familiar, you've done unconscious bias trainings, and that has really helped us, I think, to raise awareness, okay, about biases that come up at work. I can give you an example. In talent reviews in the past, before we did trainings, it was not uncommon for me to hear people say, she's a bit too pushy, she's a bit too aggressive, she's got sharp elbows, she's too ambitious, when describing taking control behaviours that when described about men were much more positive. It's very rare to hear those comments today, so we have raised awareness. And if those comments come up, normally the man in the room will jump on someone else and say, would you say that about a man? But fundamentally, you can't get rid of bias, okay? We cannot get rid of our bias. So more than training, and I love what Microsoft is doing, it's focusing on embedding unconscious bias circuit breakers in systems, and you have to start with data, looking at all your data, the percentage of women versus men recruited, promoted, getting high performance ratings, low performance ratings, so you can see where the gaps are and you know where to take action.
Okay. It was a privilege. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.